Hi there. On this day in 1841, after serving for only 1 month, William Henry Harrison became the first U.S. president to die in office. He was succeeded by Vice President John Taylor. I have no idea how these things end up on my sheet, but I read them if they're here. So that's a story for you. There's actually a really cool episode of Veep around that. Have you guys seen Veep?
Love Veep.
Veep is so
Love such a good show.
good.
I missed that show.
Oh my gosh, Veep is good.
So good.
It's unbelievable. We have Anna Robertson here today from the Cool Down. Anna, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, tell us about the Cool Down. This is a fascinating site you've got going on.
Yeah, the Cool Down is really sort of a guide to helping the planet, saving money, living healthier. We are a website, free newsletter, which is sort of the best way to interact with us, getting the newsletter. But we're trying to make climate topics a little less overwhelming and give people easy, practical ways that they can make changes in their life that will have an impact on our planet, but are also just really great for them.
And by the way, this is you live in Utah, so it's headquartered in Utah, right?
Well, it's not headquartered in Utah. We're a fully remote company.
Oh, I
so
see.
we didn't want to create another sort of New York, LA media company.
Yeah.
So we have people all over the country, from Bend, Oregon to Savannah, Georgia, Texas, New York, everywhere. And really that helps us to reflect the places we want to serve, right? The entire country, and bring everybody into this conversation, get more people talking about climate.
So how long have you been doing this?
So we launched in July 2022. My background is in the media space. So I spent, 20 plus years at ABC News and Disney and Yahoo. My co-founders started Bleacher Report, which you guys may know a thing or two about as huge sports fans here.
Yeah.
And so, we kind of saw this gap in the climate solution space, which is that, a lot of the communications just really bad around climate. A lot of it is focused on doom and gloom, very sort of, honestly, a lot of it was pretty boring, complicated language people can't understand. And so we decided that, there needed to be a mainstream climate brand that makes these topics more engaging. Because when we dove in, I thought it'd be depressing to get into the climate space. Actually, so exciting. It's so much fun because there's so much innovation happening. Obviously, we're sitting here in the middle of a huge tech and innovation hub, right, in Utah, which is why it's great to live here and be creating this company from this place. But we wanted to highlight some of those innovations because I think that the more people sort of understand that there is progress being made, that there's a ton of innovation and there's ways that all of us can be involved, it's a lot easier to be a part of that rather than just saying like, oh, it's too late, nothing I can do, right? These things are too complicated, it's too hard. And so that's why we created the Cool Down. We've actually become, one of the fastest growing media brands, period.
Yeah.
Certainly the largest climate brand. We're reaching about 35 million people a month, or 1 in 8 Americans. So, we've kind of used some of that special sauce and that playbook from Bleacher Report around sports to really think about, how to create great, engaging content around climate that doesn't overwhelm.
With the media landscape changing as much as it is, and with AI now being able to, supplement some of these publications, not well, by the way, but it does. What is it like to build a media company in this era? Because I remember the Bleacher Report, if I remember this right, it was like early 2010s, something like that.
Yeah.
And then and the whole idea there was like a series of blogs. Am I getting that right? Like on various teams and things of that nature. Yeah,
it was really just sort of enabling people to connect with the teams they love as fans a little bit more effectively, right? They did have, very early days, very aggressive newsletter strategy and very early, influencer strategy. And so, it's a different landscape today. Obviously, we're living in sort of the media 3.0 world where they were launching in media 1.0, and it's definitely a much more fragmented space. But in some ways, there's never been a better time to launch a media company, and we've certainly been successful over the past couple of years by sort of tapping into what's working, and then also building smartly. Building a small team, building slowly, using data. That was a huge piece of Bleacher Report's success. Was really data-driven decisions and really serving the audience. What does the audience want? Instead of, a bunch of media executives coming up with ideas about what people want to see, we were really looking at, what stories are resonating, what content is resonating, and serving that audience. So, it's been really interesting, but we've built, slowly and have kind of figured out that, it's sort of this mixture of figuring out where the audience is going, having a strategy. Obviously we're very well distributed across the web. So we have great distribution footprint on Yahoo and MSN and Apple News. So a lot of people read our content there. We also have a very robust newsletter strategy, which enables us to have that direct connection with our audience. And those folks are a little more engaged in sort of, really specific actions they can take in their life. So, it's a lot of, learning, testing, and growing really smartly, not building a huge team at first, figuring out how to build in the right way.
That seems like the hard thing as a media company, right? Is not to hire too many people too quick, because you want as much content and as much quality as possible. But you've also got to figure out what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, and it's finding those right people, right? Who are those first 5 or 10 people that are going to make your company a success? And we're really lucky. We have an incredible group of people who are very digitally savvy, but also have a real passion around climate. So we've built that with a great group of people, and then sort of scaled as we've seen success in certain areas and doubled down in those categories. And obviously, we've all learned that you can't chase traffic anymore. You have to be really smart about where you spend your time, and really relentlessly prioritize what platforms you're on, and make sure that you do have that direct connection with your audience, and you're not dependent on other platforms or one platform in particular. I think a lot of media companies have struggled with that, right? Trying to game the system and trying to be dependent on one platform. That's why we have diversified strategy, both from a distribution standpoint and from a monetization standpoint.
I would be interested in what folks are interested in now. There is so much about the environment and climate and recycling. Sometimes people throw their hands up and be like, "Oh, too much." What in 2024? What are people interested in, and what are they going to do with that interest?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really about meeting people where they are, right, and around their passion points and what they're interested in already. We all want the same things. We want clean air. We want clean water. We love to garden, right? We love to do things in our home. Those are topics that are sort of these top of the funnel topics that we found people really interested in. How can they change their yard to plant more native plants so we don't have so much grass that needs a lot of water? How can you work with your HOA to make changes in your HOA? There's so many things people can do, just starting with these big passion points, whether it's, gardening, whether it's clean beauty or makeup, or, there's really an entry point for everybody. And so we sort of look at these big passion points, and then, bring people into the tent. Food waste is a huge one. People really are sort of picking up on food waste, and they hate to see companies throw out a lot of stuff, right? Or how to get rid of your old stuff, right? People don't like having a lot of stuff, and they want to get rid of it responsibly. And if they can make some money doing so, that's great, right? So we see a huge interest in what we call the circular economy. People don't call it that. They just say, how do I get rid of my old stuff and make some money from it, or keep it out of a landfill? And so when we can get people in through these topics that they're interested in, then we can kind of educate them about that issue, about fast fashion, or about electric lawn equipment and how much better it is for the planet and for your own health, and then kind of bring them down to taking action. So yeah, it's all about sort of figuring out what people's passion points are.
I love it. Do you remember my alter ego, Ralphie the Recycler, at the old office?
Yeah, it was so dumb. Tell the world about how dumb you are.
I love this.
I spend a lot of time going through garbage cans and dumpsters because
no, that's it. You don't need to explain it. That's it. That's what he was.
You know what?
That's what it was.
I feel you. I'm I'm a dumpster diver myself. My husband always jokes that I'm a hoarder because I've got all these little piles of things I want to recycle. But yeah, it drives me crazy when people, but it's funny because people think climate is recycling, and it's really sort of like a diversion from the topic. I mean, only 5% of plastics actually get recycled anyway. Yes. So it's like recycling is great, and we need to do our best with recycling and improve recycling, but there are so many other things that people can do in their own lives to make a difference too.
Yeah.
But I love that you do that.
I hated it.
It got a little bit overbearing with certain rules and restrictions, and then ultimately me taking a lot of stuff home and either putting it in a dark spot of the yard, which my wife hates, and or taking it to recycling centers, or taking it to DI or something.
There you go. What's the weirdest thing that you have
great
saved?
question. Great question.
Or you
dumpster diving, Dyson vacuums, like $4,000 or $5,000 worth of fancy strollers.
So you're saving money.
Yeah, and then you just put it out on the side of the road and write free on it instead of throwing it in the dumpster.
Yeah, I mean, I know people who furnish their entire apartments in New York just by getting furniture off the street. I mean, I just did an interview about these women on TikTok who furnish their entire apartment on Facebook Marketplace. So, I mean, this is like a real way to, save money, get a good cleaning on that couch you picked up on the side of the road or whatever, and,
Absolutely.
fix the Dyson vacuum. Good to go.
It already worked. That's the appalling part about it. One thing that most people enjoy, you've mentioned, is gardening, right?
Yeah.
So with that, it is fun because you can compost in the winter. You can obviously garden in the spring, summer, and fall. There's all sorts of amazing ways that you can get a good ROI out of a small plot of land, and you can water effectively. It's never been easier to have fun being green.
Totally. I mean, there's so many great ways to, if you look at, we do a lot of before and afters of people who have, made their lawn a little bit more water efficient, and they're gorgeous. I mean, just to look at all the native plants you can plant here that are, a little more water efficient, replacing your gas powered lawn equipment with electric lawn equipment is one of the biggest things you can do. It's, a crazy number, 5% of our emissions comes from lawnmowers alone. And when you think about all the gas that's blowing out, not only is it polluting the environment and your family, but these electric lawn mowers and lawn equipment, they're quieter, they work really, really well. So, I just did an interview last year with the CSO at the Chief Sustainability Officer at Home Depot. They're switching, 80% of their lawn equipment is going to be electric. So simple things like that. We see huge interest in tomato hacks and, ways to grow your own fruits and vegetables. I mean, eating local is such a huge thing, and growing your own fruits and vegetables, not only is that healthier, but it's really good for our planet so that, we're eating local. So there's so many things with gardening and lifestyle. We see a huge, huge interest in that category.
Yeah.
What are the platforms that you're seeing that work as a media company currently? Because I remember BuzzFeed, I think it was 17 or 18. They were we're platform agnostic. We'll go anywhere. We'll put our stuff on everywhere. Yeah. It actually seemed really cool, but I don't think it worked out.
Yeah, I mean, newsletters are still really powerful. And it's funny, even sort of when I talk to kids at college and universities, they're reading newsletters again. I think we've sort of gone back in time, right?
I love
it.
I
love, a good newsletter. And, in the climate space, honestly, a lot of climate newsletters have been very text heavy and boring. So we tried to create a newsletter that was super engaging and fun to read. So it's a little bit more sort of morning brew style. But yeah, newsletters are super powerful. I mean, obviously people are still spending a lot of time on Apple News, Yahoo. We get a ton of traffic from MSN. They're still sort of powerhouses in terms of content distribution. But yeah, some of the social media platforms are a little harder to get traction, and oftentimes it's a different audience in these places. So you have to, we don't feel like we can be everywhere and do a good job. So we've picked a few places where we think we need to do well, and we want to do well with our audience, and we've really doubled down in those areas.
What about podcasting? Have you thought about getting into that?
We have, yeah. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but we certainly, appear on a lot of podcasts. My partner Dave was just on the Bill Simmons podcast last week. He's an investor in the Cool Down, which is awesome. But we haven't started our own podcast. Again, just really thinking sort of relentless prioritization as a small business and a small media company. So we haven't gone there yet, but stay tuned.
How do you force yourself to maintain that focus? I'm fascinated by it.
I mean, I've got to credit, our CEO, Dave Finocchio, and my co-founder, Ryan Alberti. That's, I think, really a huge piece of the Bleacher Report DNA. And Dave has been down this road many times. So he's super focused on, really what are our quarterly goals? What do we really need to do well? What are the 3 things we need to do well? Not the 10 or 15 things, but where are the 3 areas we need to win this quarter and this year to be a successful business? Because if we don't stay focused on those priorities, we're not going to be here in a year or 2. So I think just looking at, at our trajectory, which has been, really sort of this under the radar, crazy growth. I mean, even we have been as surprised by how quickly things have grown for us. I think, we owe a lot to really staying focused, trying things, and then when they don't work, abandoning them and moving on to the next thing, and just, trying and giving it enough time to see if it works failing fast.
Yeah.
What were the 3 things for this quarter?
3 things for this quarter. So we just launched our B2B business. So we sort of realized that, given our massive scale at this point, we have a tremendous amount of data about what mainstream America actually cares about when it comes to climate. In our space, there's a lot of surveys and focus groups, what people say they're going to do around these things, but not what they actually do. So we are building a B2B business that's focused on helping businesses to communicate more effectively with mainstream America, both to sort of reach our audience of, really qualified, interested in sustainability audience, but also, insights and A/B testing and message testing. So we launched a B2B business this quarter, and our goal was to launch a free newsletter really geared towards the business community. So I've been interviewing executives at tons of different big companies, from Hellman's, Ford, Dannon, all different kinds of companies, and featuring them in this newscast and really building up our B2B offering. We just hosted our first webinar last week for businesses. So that's our huge priority for this quarter, is getting that off the ground and developing some relationships with clients. Like the NBA is a client of ours. So we are producing, an internal newsletter for the NBA to help them connect with players and coaches. Another big goal for us was just increasing our newsletter audience, because that's really we want to get to, a bigger number as quickly as possible, because that audience we own, we can communicate with them, just a really valuable way to create a community with them. And then we're also behind the scenes developing a really exciting guide product, which will basically sort of give people a guide towards taking steps in their own life. So we've been, developing that and looking forward to launching. We've got a beta version up, but we've kind of identified the 16 most common journeys that people take when they get interested in these topics. It might be getting rid of plastic in their life, or changing the way that they eat, or, composting, things like that. So we're really building out these robust guides where we can give people tips, and then also connect them with other people who are doing the same thing, so they can see like, oh, I did this, I tried that, or I want to do this, or how did you do that? So that's been a really exciting product that we're developing behind the scenes.
I love that. So if enough people, and you've got a huge audience, give it the old college try and do 8 of those 16, that will move the needle.
Yeah, it's huge. I think people feel like, there's nothing I can do, or, I don't have a role to play in this. And the reality is that we all have a part to play in this. And, most of us do care. The vast majority, the data keeps coming out. Most of us do care about climate, but we're not talking about it enough, and we don't know that each other cares about it. So first step is just talking about it, having a conversation at the dinner table with your community, with your friends, and figuring out, what you can do. And then really just starting, like, what can you do in your community? So like when I moved to, here to Utah, I just called up the school and said, like, do you have, a composting plan, or what, do you have a green team? What are you guys doing? And, that has led us to creating a composting program for, our 450 students, where we're composting lunch every day. And we got a rain barrel, and we do clothing swaps, and, all of those things. Like, we don't realize if you just ate, one fewer hamburger, it's not about becoming a vegan and doing an, crazy eco lifestyle. It's just about making these small changes. And, we've already made tremendous amount of progress on these issues. I think a lot of people don't know that, because they hear all this doom and gloom. And yes, we do need to be concerned, and there is a real, there's an urgency to what I'm talking about. But we also need to be reminded that we can make change, we can make progress, and we are making progress. And so, like, anything you can do in your own life and in your own community, particularly like buy what you buy matters. These companies, like if you, I was talking to the chief sustainability officer at Albertsons, and she made a great point. Like, when you're in the supermarket and you walk down what used to be the soda aisle, most of that is water now. Most of that is sparkling water. It's liquid death, and it's all the spindrifts and the, all the water. Like, that is because consumers wanted that change. And so, when we go into the grocery store and we purchase products that are, that are climate friendly or plant-based or upcycled or whatever it might be, or we buy clean beauty products, or, we ask companies, like, that's why Walmart just launched, their clean beauty program, which banned 1,200 ingredients, that were previously not banned. So we have a huge say as consumers, and in our day-to-day life, and, would just love to empower anybody to make any change in their life will help.
And you do that, like, I'm on your website now, and you have your shop section, and you actually like recommend products. And am I right about that? And like tell people like this, if you want to be more green or help on this issue, here are products you should be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, we're not sort of a product focused site, so
Yeah.
I don't want people to to think like we actually don't have a huge focus on that, but we definitely make recommendations, and around different things, and always are suggesting every category. We've got the 3 or 5 products that we love because people get overwhelmed by choice too. There's so many out there. So we pick a couple and recommend them to folks, and they're always just our pure editorial recommendations. We're not being paid for those recommendations. And because the truth is, like, a couple years ago, when there was a green leaf on something or it said green, it a lot of times didn't work as well. Maybe it didn't taste as well. Maybe it was more expensive. And that's just not the case anymore. I mean, there's really no sacrifice anymore in terms of the products. And in fact, a lot of these products, you can save money. A lot of them are better for your health because they include less toxins. So that's kind of the message that we're trying to get out there for consumers is like, forget those days when that stuff didn't work. The cleaning products work, the beauty products work, like all of that stuff, the electric lawn equipment, all of that works. And for businesses, like, this doesn't have to be a line item. This is really about, creating new revenue streams. I mean, when you look at REI, North Face, Patagonia, they've created entirely new revenue streams just based on their re-commerce business, which is basically taking, gently used items and reselling those. So those have become a new revenue stream for them, not like a line item. And a lot of these things are cost savings for companies. So it's, really like the best time ever to sort of embrace all of these opportunities as our whole society is going to transform over the next several years, regardless of what your politics are.
Absolutely.
Like, people think this is a political issue, but like, we all want the same things, and it's all heading in that direction.
It's interesting, like it does, like the media or whatever you would describe it, social media would make us believe that this is a very controversial, divisive topic, right? You have, like, on one end, people throwing spaghetti sauce on, Mona Lisas. On the other end, you have people denying that the climate is even a thing. But I think most people are like, yeah, we love the earth. We love the environment. What do we care? Like, let's just do the right thing for it.
Yeah. I mean, that's totally it here, especially here in Utah. I mean, we've seen some great movement on both sides of the aisle to, protect our Great Salt Lake and to support, climate friendly policies. I think, way too often we think that we're divided more than we are. Conservatives were, at the forefront of conservation, right? And I have a friend, Benji Backer, who's got a book coming out called The Conservative Environmentalist, and he, points to this is all of our issue, and it's the future is we all want the same things, which is clean air and clean water. We want things to be healthier and better. So I think I've spent a lot of time, and we do at the Cool Down, really trying to invite everybody into the conversation, because for too long this has been sort of perceived as an eco-liberal issue. There's a conservative climate summit that happens every year here in Utah. One of the biggest caucuses in the House of Representatives is the Conservative Climate Caucus, which was started by John Curtis.
Yeah, John Curtis.
I spent a day with Representative Curtis at his home doing a house tour, which was super fun because he built a new home and made all of these changes. He's got geothermal going through there. He talked about his insulation. He has a bidet. He uses LED light bulbs. He completely redid his backyard, and like, that's a conservative congressman who has been talking about these issues and invited his colleagues to Utah to talk about these things. So I think we can be a real model here in Utah of how people can come together around these issues, and particularly because we live in this gorgeous place, right? And so much of our economy here relies around protecting it, right? Around protecting the nature and the fact that people love to come here and recreate and ski and hike and all of those things. And, we all want to protect that. So, and we have to protect that. So it's, it's an economic issue first and foremost. But it drives me crazy when, the politics divides us instead of sort of uniting us around this future.
Yeah, no need for any of that divisiveness anyways. Like, that's just like, it's like the extremes on both sides. I mean, Teddy Roosevelt, Republican president, that's all he cared about was conservation, right? Like, he got lost for, I think, 3 months in Yellowstone while president. Can you imagine somebody doing that?
Yeah. That would be nice.
These days, like, this is what, like you said, this is what conservatives are about. It's literally in the name.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many. We just did a fun, we're working on a fun video series where we sort of like asked folks to guess, did a Republican say this or did a Democrat say this? And it's really hard to tell because, like, if you look at some of the quotes, even just from our recent past, like, people, it's funny. We think that these climate deniers are such a big group, but they're vocal. They are loud, and they will jump in there on comment streams, and they will make themselves heard. But they are a tiny fraction of the population. All of the data shows that most of us really agree that this is a problem, that we want it to be fixed. We want the world to be left a better place than when we found it. Right?
Yeah.
So there's so much opportunity there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I watch This Old House on PBS, and I have for a long, long time, and it's interesting to
This
watch.
show is basic, like 25% of the show is him confessing to the weirdest things.
But they'll go in and redo these old houses, right?
Yeah.
And so they'll start with, this house is 120 years old. It's in New Jersey, and it's oil and gas and coal, and they're pulling out the old systems, and this was put in 1950, this was put in 1970, and it's just bad, and then it progressively gets a little bit better. But now when they redo these houses, it's geothermal and solar, and you could live in this house with probably paying $10 a month for electricity. Oh. And I love that type of stuff. Second question, well, that's not a question, it's just like I really love watching the progress with
just a little promo
developers.
For Old House on PBS.
Yeah, well, we need the next version of This Old House. Actually, they have a great Instagram where they feature a lot of these things too. But we need the next gen version of that where we show all these upgrades, right, and how you can make your house healthier and save money, because you can just by installing. And right now, there's so many tax credits and benefits to make those changes to your home. Like we've been working through those in our own house, like improving the insulation, not super sexy, but really can have a huge impact, or getting solar panels or electric, all those, all that kind of thing.
Yeah. Each generation, it seems, is more environmentally friendly, right? I'm a millennial, and I remember there being this is going to be the generation that saves the earth. And then the next one was like, you guys suck. We're going to save the earth. With your data and, the demographics, which generation do you find puts their money where their mouth is?
I mean, that's a good question. I'm not sure I'm the best. I'm not sure I have an answer to that in terms of, where they're putting their money where their mouth is. I think your generation, millennials, is really sort of, because you are having kids right now, you are, making a lot of buying new homes, all of those things. I think you're thinking about those things in a new way, right? And in a more responsible and educated way, right? We see a lot of older generation who feels, some guilt for sort of where we've ended up and how things have happened. So I think there's a lot of interest on the older generation. I think we have to be really careful about the younger generation feeling jaded on this issue, and feeling like, it's too late or angry about what they've inherited, because the reality is we haven't left them a great situation. So there's a lot of work we need to do to make that happen. But I think, as the millennial generation sort of grows up and starts to have these sort of life moments where I think, the light bulb goes off. Like when you have kids, you start to think about what am I putting on my child? What's the diaper? What are the things, what are we doing? And I think that's a moment where, you might make some different choices. And then that kind of carries, through your first home purchase. And, now we have so much more education about these topics that, my prediction would be that's the generation that's going to really help us to make a lot of change.
Oh, interesting.
We have a little bit of news here. First news item, Garrett's a millennial. I legitimately thought you were 65 years old.
I sometimes act like it.
That part's crazy. Number 2, the Oakland A's have decided to make their home in Sacramento rather than Daybreak for the next 2 years while the Las Vegas Stadium is being built. So we will not get the A's for 2 years here in the state of Utah, which was very exciting stuff. So that means the Bees will go to Daybreak and that new stadium, and the Miller family and the rest of the groups will keep trying to get an MLB team here. But that sucks.
That's just bad news. That's a bummer.
Yeah.
You can dream, and then
that would have been incredible.
You're crushed.
They came here, the A's people. Another thing that we should talk about is Trent Staggs running for Senate. Do you know anything about him?
I do not.
He's Riverton's mayor, and he keeps getting endorsed by Tuberville and Matt Gaetz. Anyways, I don't know why that story was in my thing. I don't want to talk about that. So yeah, those were the stories that were sent to me.
Not a lot of news today.
That was so crazy. I had nothing on the Trent Staggs thing. Literally nothing. I don't know anything about him.
No, we'll get that one on Monday. it is a crowded field, but I think there's a lead horse out there, and it sounds like
we may have mentioned him.
Yeah,
in this podcast already.
Yeah. I'd be interested, what it was like to work with Diane Sawyer and work at ABC all those years.
It was amazing. I mean, so I was Diane Sawyer's producer for many years. Lucky enough to work with her for over 10 years at ABC, covered 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, tsunami, war in Iraq. And, she's the best of the best. I mean, the thing people don't know about her is that she's even better off camera as a producer as she is on camera. So it was incredible training ground for me as a young producer to learn from her. And obviously, super exciting to be just, waking up at 4 a.m, reading 6 newspapers a day, briefing guests before Good Morning America. Just, really thrilling part of my life and traveling the world, telling stories. So it was amazing.
I bet.
Yeah.
And that a lot of people don't know, like the production side is like reading and talking and debriefing and understanding, but ultimately you have to make the decisions of what Diane's going to talk about, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is just knowing a little bit about everything, right? And knowing enough to, be helping her to shape her interview questions. And it really is an art form, kind of thinking about how you interview somebody, how you prepare, how you set that up. And then putting together, that show every day and thinking about, the great importance of what Americans should hear that day and how to tell that story in a way that's really going to connect with people. And so that was kind of what we were laser focused on for all that time. I spent 5 years as her producer, just going everywhere she went and doing all of the interviews for every show she worked on. And then 5 years at Good Morning America as a senior producer. And then, then went to Yahoo and got what I call my digital MBA there, learning about the digital space and digital media. When Yahoo went through 6 CEOs over 6 years and built up a huge media organization within Yahoo. And then, back to Disney for the launch of Disney Plus and a lot of the work that we did there. Most recently I was working with the ABC owned television stations, which are local news, focused on local news innovation and sort of like how to engage the next generation in local news innovation. And that's where I got really interested in climate, just because, local communities are seeing the impact of extreme weather and really trying to make sense of it and understand, what solutions are happening in their local community. And so I did a lot of work with National Geographic and ABC News and our local stations to tell that story. We had an hour on Hulu called Climate of Hope, where we told the story through the eyes of the meteorologists, because they are these trusted figures in the community. And so, people we got data that said people want to hear more about solutions and they want to hear it from people that they trust. It was really exciting to be, part of all of that journey. And that kind of led me here, after having some personal experiences as well with being evacuated in the middle of wildfires with my kids, or, not being able to send my kids to school because the air quality was so poor from wildfires, and sort of thinking like, why are people not talking about this? Like, why don't we have, really easy solutions in front of us? So that's a little bit about my journey.
Yeah.
What led you to Utah?
I have been coming to Utah on vacation for a really long time. My parents have had a ski house in Solitude. So we spent a lot of time coming to Solitude. They would rent it and stuff when we weren't there. We just sort of loved like the proximity to the airport, to travel. And, if I needed to be being in the media business, I thought there was never an opportunity for somebody like me to be outside of New York or LA. So I was kind of pinned down to New York or LA, but, given the pandemic and everything changing, and then obviously creating a startup and a small business, I realized I had a lot more flexibility, and I wanted to be closer to nature, and just really loved all of the sort of outdoor activities, and felt like if I'm thinking about climate and starting a business, like what better place to be, right, than a place where you're surrounded by it. And there is such a robust sort of burgeoning tech and, and growth entrepreneur mindset, which is why, I've loved coming to your events and loved being plugged into Silicon Slopes, because so many innovators are here, right? And I've interviewed a bunch of them for what we've been doing. So, really have loved being here.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Well, the beauty of Utah is obviously very apparent, but you mentioned wildfires, and those will happen. Mother Nature's ultimately in charge. But do you see big spikes in readership or views when there are calamities? And what happens afterwards? Does it trickle off or do they stay engaged?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think when we saw what happened about a year ago when New York was dealing with, some of what we in the West have been dealing with for many, many years. Like we're no stranger to that thick smoke smell that comes into the air. And so I think when we saw that really hitting New York, people were like, what is this? We've never seen this before. We do see a huge interest, in both sort of A, what's happening, B, what do I need to have in my home to protect myself, air purifiers and masks and, just sort of even just conversations. I mean, last summer, extreme heat is another one where people are sort of realizing like my kids can't practice sports late at night, in the middle of the day. Summer camps are really hard to deal with the extreme heat conditions and really serious. We're going to have to think about, having practices later in the evening and certain adjustments there. But yeah, we definitely see an interest there. We do see, people coming to learn more and sign up. Hopefully they stay engaged over the course of time and, make some changes. And I think little by little, like these things all start to add up because I think, sometimes people think, oh, climate change, it's down the line or it's not here, but it is like it's here right now and it's affecting every single one of us and everything that we love. And so I think that is super important for people to kind of internalize. And those moments are really when people do connect to that. And, as we now, like, I don't think there's anybody in this country, in this world that has not been affected by this. And so, really sort of like accepting that, understanding it, and then, figuring out what your part to play in it is kind of what we're all about.
Very cool.
Anna, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
This is incredible.
No, I'm so glad to have climate be part of, what you guys are talking about on the show because it's such a huge opportunity and such an exciting space in the sort of tech space as well. So really appreciate you inviting me.
Of course, everyone check out thecooldown.com. How else can people get engaged or involved?
Yeah, I mean, subscribe to our newsletter. That's the best way to sort of educate yourself and get connected to our community.
Awesome.
Very cool.
We don't have a show tomorrow. We don't have shows on Friday. So the next show is on Monday, and we have Dan Nelson, the CEO of GBS Benefits. Everybody have a great weekend. Stay safe. It's spring break, right?
For some, yeah.
Not yet for us, but
yeah, not for us. All right.